Youngest serial killers in the world. Imagine a world in which the concept of innocence breaks down the barriers of horror, and in which the perpetrators of atrocities that are incomprehensible to us fail to meet our expectations for youth and morality. Have you ever given any thought to the terrible notion that there are youngsters walking among us who are keeping the darkest of secrets and doing acts of violence that are beyond comprehension? As we go on a journey into the brains of the youngest serial killers in the world, where the borders between innocence and malevolence blur into a disturbing reality, we invite you to join us on this adventure. What is it that drives these young souls to venture into the shadows, leaving a path of destruction in their wake? In this disturbing examination into the depths of young serial killers, you should brace yourself for an exploration of the inconceivable that will send chills down your spine. At the age of 8, Amarjit Sada was accused of committing 3 murders, and psychologists referred to him as a sadist who lacked any sense of good or wrong. Mr. Sada Amarjit murder in Bihar, the most horrifying crime, committed by the world's youngest serial killer. The 8-year-old zadist, who became the youngest serial killer in the world, is known as Amarjit Sada. Amarjit Sada was not your typical 8-year-old son. He was not your typical 8-year-old. A report from the New Indian Express stated that he committed his first murder in the year 2006, and the victim was his cousin, who was 6 years old. According to reports, a psychologist referred to him as a sadist who derived pleasure from inflicting injuries. In point of fact, according to the Crime Wire, on the day that Amarjit was being questioned by the officer in charge of the Bhagalpur police station in the state of Bihar, he initially requested biscuits before responding to any requests for information. It was impossible for the officer to ignore that the person sitting next to him was only 8 years old, despite the fact that Amarjit's lack of interest in the situation infuriated him. The Crime of Unreported. The birth of Amarjit's sister made it much more challenging for the family to make ends meet. Amarjit was born to an impoverished couple who worked as laborers in the state of Bihar. In spite of the fact that Amarjit was a recluse by nature, he would spend his time climbing trees and exploring the surrounding area of his hamlet. An unanticipated change occurred in his life when his aunt, who had recently received a job in the city, came to see him at his home with her kid, who was 6 years old. Sada was left in charge of the 2 youngsters after his aunt and mother left the house to go grocery shopping a few days later. Sada was now responsible for the children. It was on this day that his life began to take a perverse turn. In the beginning, he began to pinch and slap his cousin several times. As soon as she started crying, he wrapped his hands around her throat and suffocated her. It was only after that he ultimately strangled her to death. It was alleged that he traveled to the neighboring woodland, where he smashed her head into a pulp, and then eventually came home after burying her. Despite this, his parents continued to protect him even after he admitted to the crime, and it wasn't long before it was time to go on to the next victim, who was his sister. While Amarjit's parents were napping during the winter day, he shifted his attention to his sister rather than his parents. It is said that he removed her from the cot and then proceeded to choke her to death. The subsequent time that his mother took her up to feed her, she was aware of what had transpired. She questioned Amarjit if he had done that, and he responded with a nod of his head. Upon being questioned why, he responded by saying, "Just like that." On the other hand, his parents did not report him to the authorities after the incident. Nabe Amarjit by the police. 2007 was the year that Amarjit was apprehended by law enforcement during the commission of his final murder. Khushbu, a newborn girl who was 6 months old at the time, was the victim this time. Upon her return, the mother of the infant discovered that her daughter had vanished from the elementary school where she had left her before she went. After a few hours had passed, it was claimed that Amarjit admitted to having killed her. Afterwards, he revealed that he had buried her after he had first suffocated her and then beat her with a brick. He went so far as to guide the people to the location where he laid her to rest. It was in the school that she was napping. According to The Guardian, he informed the authorities that he had taken her a short distance away, then killed her with a stone, and then buried her corpse. At the age of 8, Amarjit was finally called in by the authorities to appear before them. After everything that he had done, he was said to be cool and composed, and there was not the slightest sign of fear on his face. The police officers were taken aback by his lack of concern, but they were able to convince him, and Sada eventually brought them to the location where he had buried his final victim, which was a plot located behind the primary school. After then, he proceeded to inform the police about his previous homicides in a calm and collected manner. The fact that he was a minor at the time of the killings led to his placement in a juvenile home where he was held in isolation for the duration of his rehabilitation. According to reports, the medical professionals who treated him diagnosed him with a behavior problem in which he found joy in causing harm to other people. Reports indicate that Amarjit was released under a new identity in 2016, the year he turned 18 years old, and that nobody is aware of his current whereabouts. In the horrific chronicles of the youngest serial killers in the world, we are pushed to confront the frightening fact that innocence may be perverted, and childhood dreams can transform into nightmares of unimaginable horror. This is a reality that we are forced to confront. These stories disturb the very foundation of our understanding of human nature, requiring us to face with the terrible truth that evil has no age limit. As our investigation into the lives and acts of these juvenile offenders continues, we are compelled to take into consideration the numerous elements that play a role in their plunge into the shadows. The stories serve as a sobering reminder of the complicated interaction of nature and nurture in the construction of a killer. From the traumatic experiences that they may have been exposed to the cultural factors that shape their worldview, each story serves as a reminder of the complex interplay. In spite of this, there is a ray of light hidden within the gloom. It is a call to action to tackle the underlying causes of such tragedies and to intervene before it is too late. As a result of these events, we are compelled to reevaluate our support systems for youngsters who are at risk, to increase services for mental health, and to cultivate situations in which children feel comfortable enough to seek assistance and guidance. It is only through addressing the underlying causes that motivate young people to do such horrible acts that we can have any hope of preventing similar tragedies and protecting those who are innocent. The accounts of the youngest serial killers serve as a sobering reminder of the precarious nature of childhood innocence and the significant influence that early intervention and assistance may have on the development of a person. They challenge us to go deeper than the surface and to address the unsettling truths that lie beneath. For it is only then that we will be able to start healing the wounds of the past and creating a better future for future generations. Subscribe now to gain exclusive access to our comprehensive exploration of the chilling tales of the youngest serial killers in the world.